The head of the FCC announcing his proposal to reverse how internet traffic is regulated by rolling back Obama-era net neutrality rules. Joining us now to discuss the winners and losers from this, Dennis Berman, financial editor at the Wall Street Journal, and Mark Grossman, who's social media and technology lawyer here with us at Post 9. Dennis, you guys do have kind of a run-through of who is best helped by this and most hurt. So now that it's really happening, who are they?
Sure. Well, of course, the biggest apparent winners, Kelly, are the big internet and telecom companies. Well, I should say the big telecom and wireless companies. That's AT&T, that's Verizon, that's Comcast, T-Mobile and Sprint, at least on the edges of that, seem to be apparent winners. The losers, big users of broadband, Netflix, Facebook, Google, gaming companies like Activision. And, you know, it seems like that's the simple way of viewing it. But it gets so scrambled. Net neutrality is so hard sometimes to figure out. I think long-term, it's going to be very interesting. In some ways, net neutrality may well benefit the big internet companies like Facebook and Google, simply because they're the ones who have the mass to negotiate with the broadband providers. So it's not as simple as it seems, even though at least at first blush, there are some winners and losers.
Yeah. And the share price reaction, which had a lot of those technology names positive, would seem to hint at that too. Mark, what are you looking at this from?
I basically agree with Dennis. The winners are the broadband companies at the top of the food chain. At the bottom of the food chain are consumers. No matter what happens at the top of the food chain, they lose. But, you know, another...
Why?
Because any increase in cost at the top of the food chain is just going to roll down to consumers ultimately. But there's another loser, and that is companies that would like to compete. Imagine being a new competitor to a Netflix. Netflix can afford the fast lane. If you're a new competitor to Netflix, you can't, and it stifles innovation.
But if I'm a consumer who doesn't use a lot of Netflix, which, by the way, I don't really stream a lot at home, period, could I be able to pay less than to my provider now and let someone else who consumes more pay more?
Undoubtedly, it's not going to work that way as a practical matter. Somehow prices never going to go down. But imagine making the same argument about voice communication by telephone, electricity. Could you imagine a fast lane for electricity? You get better and faster and more electricity if you pay more for rates. The concept here, the overarching concept, is regulating them like a utility. They're critical infrastructure, and the idea of charging more for a better version of critical infrastructure seems inherently wrong.
Mike, what would you say?
I mean, I agree that that's the way it should play out on paper. I mean, I do think one of the elements is not just will you pay premium to get it fast, get more data coming through the pipe, but will the broadband providers try to slice the product, unbundle the product into a certain thing? So they could offer you just sort of a limited, you know, messaging plus whatever, just a bare bones thing, and disaggregate the product that way, which is all going to add up to better economics for the broadband provider. So I do think that it's going to just kind of swing the power back in that direction.
But Dennis,
hey,
you're
Kelly,
saying that's too simplistic an argument? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think there are two things to think about. There was a New York Times story that talked about telecom giants, and at least by any normal conception, they are giants. But you know who's bigger is the gods of the internet. And the gods of the internet are largely Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. The combined market cap of virtually every media company in the United States still does not equal that of Facebook. So it's very interesting that in the world of 2018, how much power Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon truly have. So I think the dynamic here really is different than one even conceived, say, in 2013, even in the Obama era. And secondly, it does seem that we may have, if Congress has the guts to take on another big issue, a whole new round of legislation to really figure out how all this is regulated. Yeah. Because we're trying to use old mechanisms from the 1930s, which really have no bearing whatsoever on what's happening today.
All right, got to leave it there. Dennis, thank you. Mark, appreciate it very much.
Thank
Dennis
you.
Berman, Mark Grossman.